We're joined by Dan Geltrude, managing partner at Geltrude & Co. Dan, great to have you here with us today. So markets turning lower right after this was released, this whistleblower complaint. What do you make of the market reaction?
I really don't think it's that big of a deal right now. I think the market has been much more sensitive to, let's say, China trade news than they have been to impeachment news. And the reason for that is there's a lot of speculation. One thing that we know for sure is that there will be nothing but gridlock in Congress going forward. Now, as we know, the market doesn't seem to mind gridlock because it's predictable. We know what's going to happen, which is nothing, good or bad for the country. But I really don't think the president is ultimately going to be removed unless there's some type of bombshell on the way. I think if he's impeached, I don't necessarily think that's a big deal as far as the market goes. I know that may sound crazy because as a country, we look at that and say, hey, it's a big deal that the House of Representatives would impeach the president. But ultimately, what changes? Nothing unless he's removed.
Well, market movements over the last few months have been driven by trade headlines.
Right.
Does this distract the president from reaching a deal with China anytime soon?
I don't think so. I think this will be mutually exclusive as to what happens with China. Now, I have been saying this for a while now. I would not be surprised if China stalls this deal out, because in their view, they may see the president as being vulnerable in the 2020 election. I believe China thinks they can get a better deal with someone else other than President Trump. So I really don't think that we're going to see anything major happen, although it was interesting, right? The president yesterday sends out a tweet saying, because the markets were moving in the wrong direction based upon this impeachment, he sends out a tweet and says, you know, we may be closer than you think to a deal, and then the market reacts going up. So it seems like there's a whole game going on
Well,
here.
since China, as you said, is maybe more interested in prolonging this, what are the implications to the markets, given that there might be more tariffs or companies will start to feel the heat? We're approaching holiday season, really important shopping seasons as well. What are the implications of this being dragged out that much longer?
I don't think that we're going to see a positive reaction from the markets the longer that this trade war continues as is. However, I think that the president is going to continue to play the Twitter game. He's going to try to keep the market in suspense, saying we're getting closer, we're getting closer, we're getting closer. But the Chinese are extremely patient. They are not concerned about the 24-hour news cycle.
How patient are traders, though?
Well, I think traders are not patient. And I think that traders are getting caught up in the news cycle like everyone else is. Hence why we see the market moving the way that it does based upon a tweet from the president. With no support, by the way, that anything is getting closer, just simply a tweet. And then the market reacts.
There's a big article in today's Wall Street Journal about lumber mills just slashing jobs because of President Trump's trade war. The lumber that the Chinese used to buy from the U.S., they're no longer buying. The price of some lumber has absolutely plummeted, affecting American workers. How patient are executives going to be for this type of for these tariffs? If this trade war continues past the 2020 election, if President Trump is or continues a year from now, I should say, how does that put pressure on the president to actually get something done to take pressure off these companies that are paying tariffs?
I think it will put pressure on the president. I think we've already seen that with soybeans and agriculture. From Iowa, they've started to put pressure on the president saying, hey, this is not what we were understanding was going to happen here. Things are not going in the right direction. President Trump has promised that he was going to use these funds collected through tariffs to help out our farmers. Now, is he going to pivot here and say, well, listen, we're also going to help the lumber industry? But to answer your question, I don't think executives are going to be patient. Sooner or later, they're going to want to say, this can't go on forever. We need to come to some kind of conclusion. The president doesn't appear to want to give right now. He has said, I'm not doing any type of small deal. It's all or nothing. We're all in or we're not doing it. And he continues to put pressure on China. we'll have to see how it plays out.
I mean, whether it's on trade or other topics, I think the general feeling is that this is a headline-driven environment. What does that mean in terms of how investors are thinking about macro indicators, given that we've gotten so much mixed results, right? Whether it's manufacturing or consumer sentiment or GDP or unemployment, how are they parsing through macro data differently, given that it is a headline-driven market at this point?
Well, I don't think the headlines, I don't think all the headlines are bad, that's for sure. The one thing, or I should say two things that I think really bode well is that our employment numbers are tremendous and consumer confidence is, American consumer confidence is probably carrying the entire world as far as keeping the world economy going right now. If there's a change in consumer confidence, I really think the macro data, when it indicates that, it's going to have a huge impact on this market.
Well, certainly a lot of people will be observing any sort of patterns around the holiday shopping season, Cyber Monday, Black Friday, to try to glean some of that information.
I don't think that there's any indications right now that we're going to have a negative holiday retail season at this point.
All right, that's Dan Geltrude, managing partner at Geltrude & Co. Dan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Really